Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Tonight, I'd like to deal with two related issues really. The first one is President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa has appointed his cabinet. The ANC DA coalition is up and running. The shock of ANC losing power in South Africa has been a shock to South Africa and South Africans themselves, particularly the ANC leadership. But they've accepted it and moved on. The same cannot be said of our friends across the Limpopo River, Zanu PF. I think Zanu PF have been shaken to the core. Well, let's look at South Africa. One of the DA officials has just confirmed that the DA would definitely want to recruit Zimbabweans who are skilled because of the contribution they'll make to South Africa's economy. When the results came out on the 29th of May, one of the things that I said, and it looks like it's coming true, is that the DA ANC coalition was going to revive South Africa's economy. 30 years of gross mismanagement and rampant corruption by ANC had seen South Africa become possibly yet another failed African state. They're not there yet, but they were going towards it. When you start looking at infrastructure, gross mismanagement, corruption, you realize that this is the same path, well-beaten path, that other African countries have traveled, notably Zimbabwe, of course. But DA-ANC coalition is addressing that problem. Let's just quickly listen to what one of the DA officials was saying on the matter.
Many of the Zimbabweans I know in South Africa are highly skilled and add a huge amount to the economy. Skilled people add more opportunities for unskilled people than they take away. So we want skilled migration to South Africa. We want people with skills who've got money and skills who've got entrepreneurial leanings who will start businesses. That's what we want. That's how you grow the economy.
What do we do with the unskilled, which are equally as many?
Look, you can't go around rounding up people and kicking them out. You have to go through a process of identifying who they are, determining their particular individual circumstances, and then following the law to deal with their circumstances. You can't make a generalized statement, we will kick everybody out or we will legalize everybody. You can't.
It's the Trump approach to things.
No, you can't. You can't take those extreme approaches in the real world. If you want to be a populist and a demagogue, you can say those kinds of things. But if you want to deal with real problems in the real world, you have to deal with individual issues. So, I mean, the best thing to do would be to say, let's find out who these people are. Let's find out where they are. Let's find out what value they're adding. Let's find out what the individual circumstances are.
Very rational position. I will reiterate my position that the DA-ANC coalition is going to be good for South Africa. already there is confidence in the South African economy that it's not going to be business as usual of the past mismanagement and corruption, which is a positive thing in itself. So we are going to see South Africa's economy recover, which is excellent news for South Africans themselves, and also excellent news for the whole SADC region. South Africa's economic boom can only help the rest of the region benefit from it. What is of particular note here is that South Africans are willing to employ skilled Zimbabweans. Millions of skilled Zimbabweans have been forced out of the country in the last 20 years because of the economic collapse in that country. It is ironic that Mnangagwa keeps up this rhetoric of Nyika, inovakwa, nevene, vayo. A country is built by its owners. If millions of skilled Zimbabweans, and the regime itself admits as much, have left the country because of the economic meltdown, then who is these people that Mnangagwa believes is rebuilding the country? It's just empty rhetoric. Zimbabwe is a pariah state, and I will repeat that again. Zimbabwe is a pariah state, and as long as it remains a pariah state, there will be no meaningful economic recovery. Mnangagwa must be realizing that. And the panic button, the regime has pushed the panic button. Whenever Zanu PF panics, like all tyrannical regimes, they reach out for the gun. They want to use violence to retain power at all costs. The gentleman I've got in the video, in the picture there, is General Sanyatwe. There's a video circulating on social media in which he makes it clear that Zanu PF must rule forever. We have seen this kind of arrogancy in 2008, particularly when the economy was in a mess and Zanu PF was in a panic. They realized that the regime was at risk of losing its iron grip on power. And so we had generals, police officers, and so forth coming out with all manner of outrageous statements, claiming that they would not salute anyone who did not have Liberation War credentials, things like that. Alas, we are seeing this being repeated again. Let's just listen to this video clip of Sanyatwe speaking recently in somewhere in Nyika.
Zanu PF itatonga kusika madonge ameranya. Muchida musingadi. Ameni. Apa ndakutaura sakomanda ami. Shashandisa inonzi command 40. Yes. Nyaya yemasapuku waridzi wemusanga chazvigadzira. Amen. Zanu PF. Amen. Mnangagwa. Pasi nemandu. Vayo. Security forces saka PC mkuru wemauto ndini.
Well, what you are saying there is basically that Zanu PF will rule until the donkeys have horns, and that they will use command vote. The regime is definitely in a panic. They know rigging elections. Yes, they rigged last year's elections, and they've rigged elections in the past. But rigging elections is becoming very difficult. And in their case, rigging elections, getting away with it, is becoming even tougher. Last year, they had the opportunity of having the ANC regime, which came out in November 2022 after its party congress, saying that they were not going to allow regime change in Zimbabwe. What ANC was saying there is, yes, Zanu PF can rig the elections, and we'll still back them up because we will not allow regime change in Zimbabwe. ANC was hoping that it could also maintain its iron grip on power in South Africa by helping some of the political parties with the liberation war background to stay in power and win better than Zimbabwe. But the vote on the 29th of May changed all that. South Africans denied the ANC the majority at the end of those elections on the 29th of May. For the first time in 30 years. That had the effect of removing this myth that somehow those parties that had liberation history have the divine right to rule. Like I said, the ANC-DA coalition are going to help the South African economy revive. This will only underline that same point, that there is life without the liberation, a party with a liberation war background in power. And this is something that Zanu PF is feeling and is trying to resist. The gentleman we saw in that video clip is the same gentleman we see in this picture here. He, without a doubt, must be saying this with the full knowledge of President Mnangagwa and the rest of the Zanu PF leadership. He even was saying the party slogan, and yet the constitution is very clear. All those in the security sector, as much as they are allowed to support a party of their own choice, they are not allowed to play any active role in politics. They must be apolitical. Saying a party slogan as commander of the army surely is a violation of that clause. He didn't care. The regime does not care. The regime is so desperate to stay in power, it is saying that deliberately. Like I pointed out before in the little title at the bottom there, this is the same gentleman who was the Presidential Guard commander on the 1st of August 2018 that opened fire and killed a number of people in Zimbabwe post the 2018 elections. He has been named in one of those who were to face sanctions by the Americans. He's not new to controversy. In fact, one can even say he was promoted because of his willingness to be involved in political controversy. There is no doubt that, like all the others, Zanu PF party loyalists, is desperate to see Zanu PF remain in office at all costs. We need to be on our guard. I think one of the tragedies, and I kept repeating this, and I've said it on a number of other occasions, one of the tragedies is that Zimbabwe, when we had the opportunity to implement the democratic reforms, which would have reformed institutions like the army and making sure that the umbilical cord tying them to the ruling party Zanu PF is broken. That opportunity, the best opportunity, the golden opportunity to do that was during the 2008 to 2013 GNU. It is a great tragedy that not even one token reform was implemented. And today we are paying dearly for it. We need not be in this mess if MDC leaders had not sold out during that GNU and had implemented the necessary democratic reforms. As we move forward, we really need to realize that the pressure is on. Zanu PF is feeling the pressure to hold free, fair, and credible elections. The regime is determined that it will never hold free, fair, and credible elections. But the regime also knows that its failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections can only lead to one thing. They will lose political legitimacy. I think the regime's strategy is twofold. They want to do everything in their power to make sure that they retain the iron grip on power. And the first step towards achieving that is making sure that they step up, they dial up the violence, the intimidation. The regime has since restarted the former Zimbabwe youth service. Many Zimbabweans will know the Green Bombers, the militia, who were nothing more than Zanu PF operatives. That has been relaunched, given another name, and given a different uniform. But their purpose is still remains the same. Those young men and women will be deployed to intimidate the ordinary people, particularly those in the rural areas, to make sure that Zanu PF continues to enjoy the monopoly as the only party in the rural areas. Rural areas have been no-go areas for the opposition, and they want to make sure that they remain so. In the urban centers, the regime is counting on the opposition to do the dirty work for it. The regime is hoping that the opposition will mobilize the urban voters by promising them that they will deliver change this time. This is the same promise as Chamisa made in 2018 and then last year. The promise that MDC Alliance in 2018 would win those elections, that Triple C would win the 2023 elections. Although they had not implemented even one token reform. Of course, he was lying. He wanted the people to participate to give the process legitimacy. Zanu PF and Triple C are not very different, ever since the GNU, in fact. MDC Triple C have become Zanu PF Team B. They've been playing to give the process legitimacy. They've been playing to make sure that Zanu PF wins. And so we are talking here of Team A, Zanu PF, led by Mnangagwa, and Team B, this Triple C, led by Chamisa, playing for Team A to win and for Team A to have political legitimacy. In return, they got a few gravy train seats. Yes, Mnangagwa may have something to do with it, but Chamisa, before you could enjoy the benefits of having allowed a few MDC, Triple C leaders to win the elections, he was ambushed by Tsavangu and had a number of his lieutenants recalled. That did not deter him. I think we are looking at the situation here where in 2028, Chamisa is going to do the same thing, maybe launch another party and participate in those elections, promising that the new party would win. And if the people participate in their numbers, that will give Chamisa and company a few seats and Zanu PF political legitimacy and the majority in parliament and of course the presidency itself. That is what we are facing here. The violence that this command vote that General Sanyatwe is talking about is nothing new. We should learn to expect it. The only way we're going to stop Zanu PF dead in its tracks is that the people themselves wake up to the reality that Triple C is not participating to advance the cause of the ordinary person. They are only participating to advance their selfish needs. They want the few seats that they know Zanu PF will give away to entice the opposition to participate. That's all they care about. After participating repeatedly in flawed elections only to give Zanu PF legitimacy, I say the people of Zimbabwe should wake up, should smell the coffee, and realize that Triple C are just in to abuse them. This has got to stop. People should not participate in flawed elections ever again in the future. I believe that if many people had refused to participate in last year's elections, that would have given SADC leaders food for thought. I do not think they would have hesitated denying Zanu PF political legitimacy. Most now that ANC has lost its iron grip on power in that country. We need to play our cards right. If we need change, if we are serious about change, then we must stop participating in these flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy. And we should not allow ourselves to be bullied and intimidated by the likes of Commander Sanyatu. We must start using our heads. The threats he's making are to be expected. This is a regime that is under enormous pressure to retain power at all costs. And we need to be very careful how we trade from now on, because the regime is trigger happy. They will only want to make an example of a few people by shooting them dead. We must not give them that excuse. We must be a lot more subtle. I do not believe that there is any grounds whatsoever for Zimbabweans to participate in any elections in Zimbabwe without first implementing the reforms. That is the number one task that we must carry out. Food for thought. Thank you very much for joining me today, and have a good day.